Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look and installing the ETBC7L kit on a 2024 Toyota Grand Highlander. Why would you pick up this kit? What problem is it going to solve? Well, today we have a real-world example. Our neighbor has a Grand Highlander, obviously, that they're pulling their trailer with, and we have it all hooked up. And originally they had 4-pole wiring from the factory, which is great, but their trailer today has a 7-pole. So they have this adapter here, and that does work pretty okay. But to have a 7-pole mounted up is really gonna be a little bit better option, I think, long term. And the main thing is they're using this for the lighting function on the trailer, but they also have a Prodigy wireless brake controller. It's not a traditional brake controller in the sense that you have the box mounted here. You also have a module that's wireless up front that you use instead of hard wiring in a brake controller. So if you have a Curt Echo, that's also going to fall into the same category, which is a really nice way to get a brake controller without having to install said brake controller. And that's where the ETBC7L comes into play. It's going to give you that 4-pole lighting functions as well as power. Now this is what our finished product looked like when it's installed, and that's going to allow you to have the 7-way plug as well as the 4-pole. So it's really nice. You can get both hookups with this kit, so you're not limited to one plug style. We did end up using a no-drill bracket to mount this up. There's really not a whole lot of great spots for this to mount, at least from an aesthetic standpoint, but this does get the job done. And overall, this is a really easy installation. You don't have to be a wiring expert. I'll walk you through how to get it all hooked up. And you can definitely do this in your driveway or garage. It shouldn't take too long. The first step to getting this kit installed is obviously making sure you have the 4-pole wiring already installed on your vehicle, as this is going to plug into the ETBC7L. Now ours was factory prepped with the 4-pole wiring, and there's a nice bracket actually from Toyota that they put on here. But we are going to need to remove that bracket. That way we can plug in our 4-pole behind our fascia to get a nice clean look here. So go ahead, get that bracket taken off, and then we'll pass our 4-pole wiring back behind the hitch. So putting this in a vise with just a block of wood, I bent this out, and it's going to be at a little bit downward angle, which I think is going to give it a little cleaner look anyway. I did notch this out to where this bracket sits pretty well perpendicular, and that's kind of what we're looking for. So at this point, I'm going to get the bracket mounted up, and then we're also going to take the hardware and mount up our 7-pole to our 7-pole bracket. The first connection that we're going to make is going to be taking that factory 4-pole or the 4-pole wiring kit that you install, and we're going to connect that to our ETBC7L. So as we kind of snap this into place, I'm actually going to take our 4-pole covers off, and I'll cut this one. And that way we can tape this up and zip tie it so it won't come loose long term. I just run electrical tape over the connection point, kind of keep any corrosion or water from building up in there. And then with a long zip tie, I'll route it through and just get this all zip tied together. And something that we'll do before getting anything grounded or zip tied up is we're going to connect our black wire to the black wire that already has the butt connector on it. This is going to run up to our circuit breaker and eventually the battery to give us power to our 7-pole. So I'll just strip this back. We'll give it a quick twist. And then when crimping this down, anytime you make a connection with the butt connector, I highly recommend giving it a quick tug afterwards just to make sure that it is indeed in place long term. You don't want to have to go back and trace any loose wires, so we got that attached. And just because it is living behind, in a spot where it could get potential moisture in here, I'm going to electrical tape that up. But also that brings me to our yellow and blue wire. Now, normally on the ETBC7 kit, not the L, this is where we'd run for our brake output on a brake controller. So, eventually you could tie in a brake controller. You'd need to run separate wires. And it becomes a little bit different of an install, but for now, I'm going to tape this up. That way, if they ever do put a traditional brake controller, they have access to it. And the yellow wire as well, this is going to be for a reverse light function. We're not going to be using that today, so we'll just tape these up, and that way they stay protected for whenever they want to tie into them later. We really only have this one connection left, which is going to be our white ground wire. And to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to put a small pilot hole here. and that way we can just drill that in. So at this point, we're ready to route our power wire to our battery and get that tied into our circuit breaker and get that 12-volt power. And you're in luck on this vehicle. The battery is located in the passenger compartment in the back. So we need to get this routed inside. But if you look straight up directly from the hitch, right by the heat shield, there's going to be a grommet that we can use to pass this up. I would use a small Phillips or a pick. We're just going to poke a hole through this grommet. And I'm just going to put the portion of the wire just a little bit, feed it in, and then we'll head up and make sure that we have the clearance, and we'll pull up the slack. To access our wire through the grommet as well as our battery, we're going to open up the rear hatch. We'll take our cover and just kind of set this aside for now. And it's just going to be a series of, well, a lot of interior parts that we have here, but this whole tray should be able to come out fairly easily. So it looks like we have handles here. And this side panel is holding in place, which we're going to be removing this for our battery. So just pull here, pull on this section, that's going to drop out, and there's our battery. And then this, the rest of this should be able to come out fairly easy. And you might want to take your cargo cover out. I think that'll give us enough space to really get this out a little bit easier here. And being that it's attached to the carpet, we don't want to, it's just Velcro here, but really you just need to reach down far enough, and you'll find that there's the spare tire here. So I'm just going to prop this up. There's also going to be this foam pad here that just kind of pops off, and then we can see that our wire is here. So we'll just pull all of this up. And then as you pull this up, double check underneath that it doesn't catch on anything, that it's a nice clean run. Now the hole that we passed this through is pretty small, so it stays sealed fairly decently, but if you have a larger cut, you might want to put some RTV silicone around this. That way you don't have water or the potential to come up. I don't worry too much, but it's a nice little protection to have that in place. Now seeing that we didn't have to run up to a battery and we have it right here, there's obviously going to be a ton of excess wire here, so I'm just going to cut that off, giving us still quite a bit to work with here. So what we'll do is just kind of route this nice and clean. There's a wire loom here. There's some wires that you can just kind of route this over for, just kind of keep it out of the way so it doesn't catch on anything. Now for mounting up the circuit breaker, you can find a lot of different spots. I'm going to probably just run a self-tapper off this edge, and that should be strong enough to hold it in place. You don't have to attach both of them. You can, but I like the fact that this is going to be off on its own. We don't have to worry about drilling in on an angle here. We can get a straight shot. So we'll go ahead and get this mounted up with our self-tapper. And if you need to, again, you can use a pilot hole, or I'm going to just use my punch here. And then we'll get that drilled out, put the self-tapper in place. Now, I recommend pulling off the cover on the positive post. It just kind of slides up. And that way we can gain access to where we're going to tie into power. And with the excess wire that we cut off, what you're going to want to do is figure out the length that it needs to go from the positive to the post that says battery, which is going to be that copper color. I'm going to go ahead and right about there, I think should be fine. So I'll cut my wire and we're going to make a jumper. So we'll just strip back each end. And one side is going to get the large ring terminal, and we'll test to make sure that goes over a positive. That's going to be a good spot here. So we'll go ahead, we'll get that crimped down, and then on the other side we'll use one of the smaller ring terminals, and that's going to attach to our circuit breaker. And before we connect our jumper wire to power, we'll go ahead and take the wire that we pulled up, and this is also going to receive that smaller ring terminal, and it's going to go to the auxiliary. So same thing, just kind of route this up how you want it, nice and clean. I'm going to route this behind this bracket. And then once you're happy with the length, you can go ahead, cut it, strip it, and put that ring terminal. And it's not a problem if you have a little bit of excess wire. You can bundle it up here. And just make sure you're leaving yourself a little bit of slack. You don't need to have this wire too tight. and that way you can get everything zip tied up nice and clean. So here I still have quite a bit of slack. I'm just going to cut here. We'll strip this back and get our ring terminal on. We'll attach that to the auxiliary, which is the silver post here. We'll get this tightened down. And to snug this down, it's just going to be a 3/8 socket. You don't have to get crazy as far as tightening these down. But at this point, we will attach first to the battery terminal with our jumper. We can attach this to our positive post. So this should be, being a Toyota, it should be a 12mm socket to get that nut taken off. Now that everything's attached, we'll just go ahead. We're going to zip tie up our wires, get it nice and clean in here, and put our interior pieces put back in place. Back here at the plug, I just put a little bit of wire loom on our 4-pole wiring to clean it up and just taped everything up so it's nice and sealed, and also zip tied up my wires so it's nice and clean. Just make sure that it's not rubbing against this heat shield, you know, that can chafe the wires. But with this all set up, we just need to test it to make sure that it's working. To test our light functions, the best way to do it is hook it up to the trailer that you're going to be pulling. So I'm just going to plug our 7-pole in. And I'll hop in the vehicle, run through the light signals, and have someone check the trailer to make sure that it's working properly. So we'll start off using our running lights. Next we'll do our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and I'm on the brakes, so I'll pump those real quick. And with everything working properly, we can officially say that our wiring is complete. And that was a look and installation of the ETBC7L kit on a 2024 Toyota Grand Highlander.